Why do you keep telling people things they'll never understand? Let me ask you something. Have you ever opened your heart to someone, poured out your pain, only to be met with silence or worse, a casual, "I'm sorry," before they change the subject? That's not understanding. That's dismissal. And yet, you keep handing over the most fragile parts of yourself to people who haven't even earned the right to hear your truth. Let me be clear. You think you're relieving the pressure by venting. You think you're finding comfort in speaking your problems aloud. But the truth is, the more you talk about your problems to others, the more power you give them over your emotional state. You're outsourcing your strength. And people notice. They listen, they nod, and then they remember. Not to help you, but to judge you, compare you, sometimes even weaponize your pain. You think it's harmless. It's not. It's dangerous. Pain is meant to teach you, not to be performed. Not everyone deserves access to your struggle. And in today's world, vulnerability has become entertainment. You think you're connecting. But what you're doing is opening the vault of your power in front of people who will never know how to protect it. You're giving them front row seats to your weakness, hoping for compassion. But compassion is rare, and understanding, that's even rarer. What most people offer is pity, and pity is poison to the strong. The truth is, people aren't always listening to support you. They're listening to gather information. They want to know where you're broken. They want to know how far you've fallen. And sometimes, they want to feel better about their own failures by watching yours unfold. That's the reality no one talks about. You keep thinking, they care about me. No, they're curious about you. There's a difference. And until you learn that difference, you'll keep bleeding in front of people who are only there to count your wounds. You don't need to announce your battles. You need to fight them, quietly, with discipline, with resilience, because real strength is silent. It doesn't need to be validated by others. It doesn't need applause. The strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who walk into the fire and never scream. They come out the other side changed, sharper, and more dangerous. And you never even knew they were hurting. That's power. That's control. That's how you win. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability. That's a lesson most people learn too late, after they've already exposed the rawest parts of themselves to someone who didn't earn it. You think that by sharing your truth, your pain, your chaos, you're being honest, maybe even brave. But what you're actually doing is placing something sacred, your inner world, into the hands of someone who might not respect it, protect it, or even understand it. And here's the brutal truth: most people aren't equipped to hold what you carry. They haven't done the work. They haven't walked your path. And yet, you hand them your emotions like they've earned access. That's not strength. That's desperation disguised as connection. You wouldn't leave your doors open at night, would you? You wouldn't leave your valuables out in the street. But you'll leave your mind, your heart, your insecurities wide open for the wrong people to walk through. Why? Because you're hoping someone will finally say, "I get you." But most people don't. Most people won't. And the more you share with the unqualified, the more likely it is your pain becomes gossip, your fear becomes fuel for their egos, and your story becomes entertainment. You have to ask yourself, are they worthy of my truth? Have they shown integrity, empathy, wisdom? Or am I just filling silence with vulnerability, hoping to be seen? That need to be understood. It's human. But real power, it's in restraint. It's in protecting your energy like it's gold, because it is. You don't owe anyone an explanation for what you're healing from. You don't have to spill your past to earn validation. The moment you realize that not every person deserves access to your internal world, you become sharper. You stop bleeding in front of people who have no idea how to stop the wound, and you start becoming the person who doesn't need to bleed at all. That's when everything shifts. That's when you stop leaking power and start building it. Quietly, relentlessly, intentionally. People don't always listen to support you. They listen to collect. That's the part no one wants to admit. You speak, thinking you're being heard, thinking you're building trust, but what's really happening is someone is filing away every word, every detail, every weakness you just gave them, for later. And that, later, isn't always about helping you. Sometimes it's about using you. Sometimes it's about measuring themselves against you. And other times, it's about control. Because when someone knows what breaks you, they know how to keep you small. You think just because someone nods their head says, "Wow, that must have been hard," they care. No, sometimes they just want access. Access to the behind the scenes of your life. And when people know too much, they don't always hold it with respect. They hold it with judgment. They'll smile to your face and use your story to feel better about their own mess behind your back. Or they'll bring it up when it benefits them. Remind you of your worst moments, not to uplift you, but to put you back in your place. This is why emotional discipline matters. It's not about being cold. It's about being conscious. You can't afford to hand your power to someone just because they seem interested. Just because they ask, "What's wrong?" doesn't mean they deserve the answer. They might just want the headline, not the healing. You've got to read people faster than they read you. Ask yourself, what are they doing with what I give them? Are they investing back into your growth? Or are they storing your pain like ammo? The moment you realize that not every listener is safe, you start choosing silence more often. You speak less, observe more. You hold your truth closer, and you let your actions, not your stories, do the talking. Because when people don't know what's hurting you, they can't twist it, manipulate it, or use it. They're left guessing. And that uncertainty, that's your power. Every time you speak about your problems, especially to the wrong people, you're handing them a piece of your power. You don't even realize it's happening. You think you're releasing stress, getting something off your chest. But what you're actually doing is creating a habit of emotional dependency. You're teaching yourself to feel better only when someone else hears you, comforts you, validates you. And the moment your peace becomes tied to someone else's reaction, you've already lost control. You dilute your strength every time you need someone else to carry your emotions. You become reactive instead of resilient. Now imagine this: you hit a setback, and the first thing you do is grab your phone to tell someone. Think about it. Why? To feel seen, to avoid feeling alone. That instinct to speak instead of sit with it, to vent instead of confront it quietly, is exactly what keeps most people stuck in a loop of weakness. You're not solving the problem, you're just broadcasting it. And every time you do, the problem grows stronger while you grow smaller. You can't be mentally tough and emotionally leaky. You've got to pick one. Power doesn't come from how loud you can talk about your struggles. It comes from how silently you can endure them while sharpening your response. The strongest people in the room aren't the ones who talk about every setback. They're the ones you never saw break, not because they didn't feel pain, but because they didn't hand it over for others to carry. They knew how to carry it themselves. The more you rely on external support to feel stable, the more unstable you actually are, because people come and go. Reactions shift. But your internal foundation, that's yours. And when you build that from silence, from restraint, from discipline, you become a fortress. So stop giving away your power one conversation at a time. Start owning it, stand in it, and let your strength speak for itself. Silence is a strategy. It's not passive. It's not weakness, and it's definitely not fear. It's control. It means you're calculating, you're conserving, you're watching. Most people feel this urge to speak just to fill the space. They think if they're not talking, they're not doing anything. But the smartest people in the room are the quiet ones. They're not wasting energy explaining. They're listening. They're collecting data. Because while others are busy exposing themselves, the silent ones are building their next move. When you keep your struggles to yourself, you create a protected space where no one else can interfere. No opinions, no distractions, no misguided advice, just clarity. And in that space you find your edge. You're no longer reacting to noise. You're refining your instincts. You begin to hear your own voice again, not the echoes of everyone else's judgment or sympathy. That's the place where real transformation happens. In the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments no one sees but you. You don't owe anyone a real-time update on your progress or your pain. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening, and you're not inviting the world to witness it. That's how warriors operate. They train in the shadows so they can strike in the light. They don't advertise the work, they just show the results. And when you do that, you become untouchable. Because no one saw it coming. No one even knew what you were carrying, and by the time they realize, it's too late. You've already won. Choosing silence is choosing power. You learn to rely on your own judgment, your own grit, your own emotional endurance. It's a mental discipline most people don't have, because they're addicted to attention, to noise, to being seen. But when you can detach from that, when you can be at peace without being heard, you step into a version of yourself that no one can manipulate or interrupt. You become your own source of validation, your own solution, and that's where your strength becomes permanent. Pity is poison. Don't ever mistake it for support. When people pity you, they're not lifting you up. They're looking down on you. They're creating distance between themselves and your struggle, as if they're above it. And that moment right there, that's when you lose ground. Because pity doesn't come from a place of strength, it comes from superiority. It's disguised as empathy, but it robs you of dignity. It strips you of your power under the illusion of care. Most people don't know how to offer real strength when you're hurting. They'll say, "I feel so bad for you." But what they're really doing is anchoring you to your lowest point. They don't challenge you to rise. They enable you to stay where you are. That's not love. That's comfort disguised as concern, and comfort, in the wrong hands, becomes a trap. You start believing your pain makes you valuable. You start thinking that being broken gets you attention. And once you fall into that cycle, you stay there. You stop fighting to get out because the applause feels good. Even if it's for your suffering, you need people who won't let you sit in the fire too long. People who say, "I see your pain, but I also see your potential." That's real support. That's rare. And it's earned. But most people, they'll nod, they'll coddle, they'll sympathize just enough to feel good about themselves, and then they'll move on, while you're still stuck. Don't let someone's pity become your prison. Don't confuse soft words with strong support. You weren't built to be pitied. You were built to rise. So the next time someone gives you that soft voice and sad eyes, remember, you don't need their sorrow. You need your own strength. And strength doesn't come from being felt sorry for. It comes from refusing to be defined by the very thing they're feeling sorry about. That's where your power is, not in how they see you, but in how you refuse to be seen as anything less than powerful. Pain is meant to teach you, not to be performed. But in today's world, somewhere along the line, we flip the script. People turn pain into performance, into content, into public display. You go online, and it's all there. Tears for views, breakdowns for likes, confessions to strangers hoping that someone, anyone, will validate the suffering. That's not healing. That's leaking. And when you leak instead of learn, you lose the lesson. You delay your own evolution. Pain is not a story to be shared with the world in real time. It's a storm you survive so you can speak from strength, not struggle. But people don't want to wait for strength. They want attention now. They want a reaction now. They want someone to say, "You're so brave," before they've even picked themselves off the ground. And I get it, it feels good. It feels like connection. But it's not real. It's hollow. Because when the applause stops, when the views fade, you're still left with the same wound. And now it's been exposed. Now it's been picked apart. Now it's been judged. There's a big difference between expressing and exposing. You can express your pain with purpose, after you've processed it, after you've grown through it. That's powerful. That inspires. But exposing your pain mid-process, that only shows you're still bleeding, and the world doesn't always handle blood well. Some people will pretend to care while secretly loving that you're not okay. Others will use your pain to measure their own progress. At least I'm not going through that. And the worst ones, they'll remember your lowest moment so they can bring it up the next time you start rising. You weren't meant to perform your suffering. You were meant to grow through it quietly, intentionally. Pain is your personal classroom. It's where your emotional muscle gets torn and rebuilt. And like in any training, strength doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the sweat, the solitude, the silence. That's where the breakthrough lives. Not on the stage, not in the comment section, not in the sympathy of people who don't know your name past your username. The truth is, when you share your pain too early, you dilute the very transformation you're working toward. It's like opening the oven before the cake is ready. It collapses. It doesn't become what it was supposed to. Same with you. You've got to let the pain do its work. You've got to stay in it, face it, wrestle with it, and let it shape you in private. Let it refine your thinking. Let it sharpen your standards. Let it harden your resolve. Because once the lesson is complete, you won't need to tell people what happened. They'll see it. In your posture, in your tone, in the way you walk into a room like nothing can shake you. That's the kind of power that makes people respect you without knowing your story. They feel it. Because healed pain radiates differently than raw pain. One commands attention, the other begs for it. And you've got to ask yourself, who do I want to be, the one who constantly needs to be comforted? Or the one who became unstoppable without ever needing applause? You know why pain is powerful. Because it forces you to confront the parts of yourself that comfort never touches. It brings out the real you, the raw you, the one who has to make choices under pressure. And if you're brave enough to stay in that place without broadcasting it, you'll start noticing something shift. You'll stop craving attention and start craving alignment. You'll stop looking for people to fix you and start becoming the person who never breaks the same way twice. That's the difference. People who perform their pain stay in cycles. They repeat patterns. They talk about the same things year after year because they never sat with it long enough to break free from it. But those who honor their pain in silence, they evolve, quietly, seriously, permanently. They disappear for a season, and when they return, you don't even recognize them. They've leveled up in a way that's unshakable. That's not an accident. That's discipline. And that discipline comes from deciding that your pain is yours, not the world's. It's your fire, your test, your transformation. And when you finally come through it, that's when you can share the story. Not because you need validation, but because you carry wisdom. And wisdom speaks differently. It doesn't whine. It doesn't beg. It simply says, here's what I learned. That's when people listen. That's when you lead. So stop putting your pain on display like it's proof of your worth. Your worth was never in how much you've suffered. It's in how you carry what you've suffered through, and how you come out on the other side, smarter, sharper. If you're still bleeding, don't post, don't vent, don't perform. Go inward, close the door, do the work. Because when you emerge from that storm, you won't need anyone to clap. You'll already know you made it. And that knowing, that's the reward. That's the growth. That's the kind of transformation nobody can take from you, because you earned it in silence. The strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones you never saw break, not because they never felt pain, but because they knew pain wasn't meant to be broadcast, it was meant to be born, quietly, with precision, with dignity. The people who walk through fire without screaming, who rebuild in silence without needing a witness. Those are the ones you respect without even knowing why. It's not because they share everything. It's because they don't. You think strength is loud. You think it's dramatic. It's not. It's calm. It's controlled. It's the ability to sit with your own chaos and not let it spill all over the room. When life hits them hard, they don't crumble publicly. They get still. They get sharper. They go internal. And by the time they return, they're 10 times more focused than before. That's what real strength looks like. It doesn't beg to be seen. It demands nothing. It simply exists, quietly, confidently, powerfully. You don't need to announce your struggle to prove that you're in a fight. You don't need to cry in front of people to prove that you feel. The most powerful version of you is the one who can feel everything and still move like nothing is stopping you. That doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've trained your emotional discipline to such a high level that you control what you let out and when. That's leadership. That's warrior-level strength. And not everyone gets there, because most people crack under the pressure of being unseen. But the ones who don't need sympathy, who don't chase validation, who don't feed off external comfort, those are the ones who walk into a room and own it without saying a word. Because their strength speaks louder than their story. It's in their eyes. It's in how they move. It's in how unbothered they are by nonsense, how deeply they've anchored themselves. And that kind of presence, you don't fake it. You earn it. In the dark, in the silence, in the moments where no one's watching and you choose to rise anyway. So if you want to be strong, stop showing everyone how much you're hurting. Stop needing the world to clap for your courage while you're still bleeding. Save that energy. Use it to build. Use it to train. Use it to fortify the parts of you that no one sees but everyone will feel. Because when you rise from pain and nobody saw you suffer, that's not weakness. That's elite-level strength. That's the kind of resilience that doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just walks in and changes everything. Every silent battle you face becomes another weapon in your arsenal. That's the truth people overlook because they're too focused on survival to realize they're actually stockpiling power. You see, the world teaches you to avoid pain, to talk about it, to vent it out, to get it off your chest. But what if instead you held it? Not forever, but long enough to shape it, long enough to learn from it. That pain becomes precision. It becomes instinct. It becomes a sharpened edge no one sees coming. When you fight in silence, you develop tools that the loud ones never will. You stop reacting. You start observing. You begin to understand patterns, emotions, pressure, and how to master all three. You learn how to read a room, how to read a threat, how to read yourself. And that kind of awareness, it doesn't come from being open about every struggle. It comes from facing them head on without turning it into a show. That's the difference. People who suffer out loud often stay in that suffering. But those who fight privately, they transform. You build armor every time you choose not to explode. You sharpen weapons every time you resist the urge to complain. You develop clarity every time you choose stillness over panic. And while everyone else is scrambling, breaking down, looking for someone to save them, you're standing still, calm, focused, quietly becoming dangerous in the best way, not to others, but to anything that tries to break you again. This is how emotional warriors are made. They go through things no one knows about, and because of that, they become unpredictable. People can't manipulate what they can't read. They can't sabotage what they don't know exists. And by keeping your battles private, you make sure that your enemy never sees your strategy. You keep your cards close. You become untouchable. Not because you never fall, but because no one sees you when you do. The pain you endure in silence becomes your secret advantage. And eventually, when you step into the room, no one understands why your presence feels so powerful. They don't realize you've been forged in private. That behind your calm face is a mind trained by hardship, a heart that's been broken and rebuilt with intention, and a will that doesn't bend when things get hard. It sharpens. That's what silent struggle does. It doesn't just make you stronger. It makes you sharper, wiser, more focused, and less reactive. You stop fearing the battle because you've already won wars no one even knew you were in. People don't follow pain. They follow power. They don't rally behind the one who's always talking about what went wrong. They rally behind the one who overcame, who turned every loss into a lesson and never looked back. You want to be remembered, respected, taken seriously. Then don't show them your struggle. Show them your strength. Not because the pain didn't happen, but because it didn't stop you, because you didn't stay there. You moved, you rose, you became something no one expected, and you didn't need to explain how. That's the thing. You think people need to see every step of your suffering, understand your success. But they don't. In fact, most won't even care. Some will scroll past your pain. Others will downplay your hardship. And many will quietly root for you to stay stuck in it. Because it makes them feel better about where they are. You've got to understanding, the world doesn't reward survival stories until they come with a win. No one wants to hear how hard it was until you've made it undeniable that you conquered it. Victory, that's what speaks. That's what people feel. You walk differently when you've overcome something. You look people in the eye differently. You handle pressure differently. And it's not because you told your story to the world. It's because you lived it, you owned it, and you let the result do the talking. That's what leaves people in awe. Not the details of your breakdown, but the strength of your comeback. Stop wasting your time trying to get people to understand the weight you're carrying. Show them what it looks like when someone refuses to be crushed by it. Let them see you outlast the pressure. Let them see you stay quiet while they doubted you. Then return stronger, sharper, unshakable. That's the energy that shifts a room. That's the kind of presence that doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. And when you lead with results, not stories, something powerful happens. People start to respect you not just for what you've done, but for what you clearly endured without saying a word. That's impact. That's leadership. And that's exactly who you become when you stop narrating the struggle and start embodying the strength. When no one knows what's breaking you, they can't stop your comeback. That's the kind of control most people never tap into because they're too busy giving their power away through oversharing. Every time you speak about what's hurting you, what's holding you back, what's keeping you up at night, you give people a window into your strategy, your vulnerabilities, your state of mind. And guess what? The wrong people take notes. They use it, not to help you, but to contain you, to manipulate you, to define you by the very things you're trying to overcome. Control starts with what you allow people to know. Power lives in privacy. When you control access, you control perception. You don't have to lie. You don't have to pretend. But you do have to protect. Because your energy, your focus, your internal dialogue, those things are sacred. They're not for everyone. Just like you wouldn't let a stranger walk through your home, you shouldn't let just anyone walk through your mind. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every listener is safe. And not every situation calls for transparency. There's this false belief that authenticity means full disclosure. It doesn't. Real authenticity is being solid in who you are without feeling the need to explain it. It's showing up with strength, regardless of what's happening behind the scenes. The most dangerous people in any room are the ones you can't read, the ones who smile with calm eyes while building a fire inside. That's presence. That's composure. That's intelligence wrapped in discipline. And that's what makes you unstoppable. Not just your ability to survive, but your ability to do it in silence. You start becoming untouchable when no one can predict your next move, when no one knows what phase of healing or growth you're in. They can't interfere. They can't sabotage. They can't distract. Because you've learned the power of protecting your own narrative. You're no longer reacting to life. You're constructing it, step by step, in silence. And when you re-emerge, stronger, sharper, fully formed, people will call it overnight. They'll say it came out of nowhere. That's fine. Let them think that. Let them be confused. Because while they were watching your surface, you were working on your foundation. When you stop explaining your battles, when you stop inviting others into your internal war, you conserve energy for the fight that matters, the one between who you are now and who you're meant to become. That's how you win, not by announcing every round, but by choosing what stays sacred. When your struggle is silent, your growth becomes undeniable. And your silence, that becomes your shield, your armor, your edge. That's how legends are built, quietly, relentlessly, without permission. So now you know, your power was never meant to be public property. It was never meant to be handed out in pieces to people who haven't earned the right to hold it. The strongest version of you isn't the one that's loud about pain. It's the one that transforms in silence, that learns without broadcasting, that fights without needing applause. That version of you doesn't look for validation. It creates impact. It doesn't explain itself. It commands respect. From this moment on, protect your struggle, guard your growth, and let your presence, not your pain, tell the story. Because in the end, the world doesn't remember who suffered the loudest. It remembers who came back the sharpest, the calmest, the most unshakable. Be that.